The Apennines or Apennine Mountains are a mountain range consisting of parallel smaller chains extending c. 1,200 kilometers along the length of peninsular Italy. In the northwest they join with the Ligurian Alps at Alta. In the southwest they end at Reggio di Calabria, the coastal city at the tip of the peninsula. Since the year 2000, the Environment Ministry of Italy, following the recommendations of the Apennines Park of Europe project, has been defining the Apennines system to include the mountains of North Sicily, for a total distance of 1,500 kilometers. The system forms an arc enclosing the east side of the Ligurian and Tyrrhenian seas. The etymology most frequently repeated, because of its semantic appropriateness, is that it derives from the Celtic pen, mountain, summit, Apenninus, which could have been assigned during the Celtic domination of North Italy in the 4th century BCE, before the name originally applied to the North Apennines. However, historical linguists have never found a derivation with which they are universally comfortable. Wilhelm Decker said, "Its etymology is doubtful, but some derive it from the Ligurian Celtic penaben, which means mountain peak. The mountains lend the name to the Apennine Peninsula, which forms the major part of Italy. They are mostly verdant, although one side of the highest peak, Corno Grande, is partially covered by Calderone Glacier, the only glacier in the Apennines. It has been receding since 1794. The southern mountains are semi-arid. The eastern slopes down to the Adriatic Sea are steep, while the western slopes form foothills on which most of peninsular Italy's cities are located. The mountains tend to be named from the province or provinces in which they are located. For example, the Ligurian Apennines are in Liguria. As the provincial borders have not always been stable, this practice has resulted in some confusion about exactly where the montane borders are. Often, but not always, a geographical feature can be found that lends itself to being a border. Geography. The Apennines are divided into 3 sectors: northern, central and southern. A number of long hiking trails wind through the Apennines. Of note is European walking route E1, coming from northern Europe and traversing the lengths of the northern and central Apennines. The Grand Italian Trail begins in Trieste and, after winding through the Alpine Arc, traverses the entire Apennine system, Sicily and Sardinia. Northern Apennines. The northern Apennines consist of 3 subchains: the Ligurian, Tuscan and Umbrian Apennines. Ligurian Apennines. The Ligurian Apennines border the Ligurian Sea in the Gulf of Genoa, from about Savona below the upper Bormida River Valley to about La Spezia below the upper Magara River Valley. The range follows the Gulf of Genoa, separating it from the upper Po Valley. The northwestern border follows the line of the Bormida River to Acqui Terme. There the river continues northeast to Alessandria in the Po Valley, but the mountains bend away to the southeast. The upper Bormida can be reached by a number of roads proceeding inland at a right angle to the coast southwest of Savona, the chief one being the Autostrada Torino-Savona. They ascend to the Bocchetta di Alta, sometimes called Col di Cadabona, 436 meters. The border between the Ligurian Alps along the coast to the west and the Ligurian Apennines. A bronze plaque fixed to a stone marks the top of the pass. In the vicinity are fragments of the old road and 3 ruins of former fortifications. At Carcare, the main roads connect with the upper Bormida Valley before turning west. The Scrivia, the Trebbia, the Taro and the Tanaro, tributaries of the Po River, drain the northeast slopes. The range contains dozens of peaks. Toward the southern end, the Avito Natural Regional Park includes Monte Penna. Nearby is the highest point of Ligurian Apennines, Monte Maggio Rasca at 1,780 meters. The main and only feasible overland route connecting the coastal plain of Liguria to the North Italian plain runs through Boccetta d'Alta. It has always been of strategic importance. Defenders of North Italy have had to control it since ancient times, as the various fortifications placed there testify. Trenitalia, the state railway system, highly developed on the coastal plain, now traverses the mountains routinely through a number of railway tunnels, such as the one at Geologic Pass. The southeastern border of the Ligurian Apennines is the Fiume Magra, which projects into the Tyrrhenian Sea south of La Spezia, and the Fiume Taro, which runs in the opposite direction to join the Po River. The divide between the two upper river valleys is the Passo della Sisa. Under it runs the Autostrada della Sisa between Spezia and Parma. Tuscan Apennines. Starting at Sisa Pass, the mountain chains turn further to the southeast across the peninsula along the border between the Emilia-Romagna and Tuscany regions. They are also named the Tuscan-Emilian Apennines west of the Futa Pass and the Tuscan-Romagnol Apennines east of it, or just the Tuscan Apennines. They extend to the upper Tiber River. The high point is Monte Cimone at 2,165 meters. A separate branch, the Umbrian Alps, goes to the southwest, bordering the coast south of La Spezia. Whether they are to be considered part of the Apennines is a matter of opinion. Certainly, they are part of the Apennine system. Topographically, only the valley of the river Serchio, which running parallel to the coast turns and exits into the Tyrrhenian Sea north of Pisa, separates the Umbrian Alps from the Apennines. Geologically, the rock is of a slightly different composition. Marble. The Roman marble industry was centered at Luna, and is now active in Carrara. As the Tuscan Apennines divide the peninsula between the Po Valley and the plains and hills of Tuscany and Lazio, transportation over them is essential to political and economic unity. Historically, the Romans used the Via Flaminia between Rome and Rimini. The montane distance between Florence in Tuscany and Bologna in Emilia-Romagna is shorter, but exploitation of it required the conquest of more rugged terrain, which was not feasible for the ancients. Railway lines were constructed over the mountains in the early 19th century, but they were of low capacity and unimprovable. Since 1856, a series of tunnels have been constructed to conduct the Bologna-Florence rail line, which is neither a single line nor a single tunnel. The Poratana line went into service in 1864, the Direttissima in 1934, and the High Speed in 1996. A few dozen tunnels support the three of them, the longest on the high-speed line being the Voglia Tunnel at 16.757 kilometers. The longest is on the Direttissima, the Great Apennine Tunnel, which at 18.5 kilometers is the longest entirely within Italy, although the Simplon Tunnel, which connects Italy and Switzerland, is longer. Automobile traffic is carried by the Autostrada del Sol Route A1, which goes through numerous shorter tunnels bypassing an old road, originally Roman, through Futa Pass. In December 2015, a new Route A1 called Variante di Valleco was opened after many years of construction, consisting of major tunnels, tunnel base, and new overpasses, notably shortening the traveling time between Florence and Bologna by road. The southernmost limit of the Tuscan-Romagnol Apennines is approximately Foresta Casentinese, Montefolterone, Campigna National Park. The three-way intersection of the borders between Emilia-Romagna, Tuscany and Marches is on the south slopes of Monte Fiumaiolo, from which the Tiber originates. The mountain is the furthest south of Emilia-Romagna. Umbrian Apennines. The Tiber River at Rome flows from northeast to southwest, projecting into the Tyrrhenian Sea at right angles to the shore. The upper Tiber, however, flows from northwest to southeast, gradually turning through one right angle clockwise. In the north, Valdivia is a deep valley separating the Umbrian Apennines on the left bank from a lesser range, the Tuscan Antia-Sub-Apennines, on its right. The Ensom of Valdivia are part of Tuscany, which used to be enclosed by the Arno River, the Tiber River and the coast, but has lost ground around the Tiber to Lazio and Umbria. Lazio extends a little way up the Tiber. The Valdivia, however, is mainly in Umbria. In the Apennines also and on the west coast is marsh. The Valdivia is marked on the map by Highway A1, the Autostrada del Sole, which enters it in the vicinity of Monte Rotondo north of Rome and follows the course of the river to the point where the latter flows from Lago di Cabra in the vicinity of Brescia and then goes up the valley of the Fiume Paglia. North of the lake, the course of the Fiume Tavia is marked by Highway E45, almost to where that Avia begins at Falera on the slopes of Monte Fiumeolo. That location is in Emilia-Romagna. For that entire distance, the eastern slopes of the Apennines are in marches. South of Monte Fiumeolo, the Tavia enters Tuscany. It crosses the Umbrian border in the vicinity of San Giustino and remains in it, becoming part of the border between Umbria and Lazio in the south, entering Lazio unequivocally in the vicinity of Castello del Formiche. Over the centuries, these borders have varied, mainly at the expense of Tuscany. Consequently, there has been considerable imprecision in locating the Umbrian Apennines, and therefore the highest peak in them. The major difficulty is discriminating the Umbrian of the northern Apennines from the Umbrian-Marchean of the central Apennines. The mountains of Umbria and Marches are so wide and so tangled, rather than parallel, that the borders are difficult to place and vary according to author. Many do not make the distinction, but one is still recognized, however uncertainly, by the Italian Park Service. In general, the Umbrian Apennines are located mainly in Umbria, while the great mass of mountains in Marches are considered central Apennine. Merriam-Webster's Geographical Dictionary defines the Umbrian Apennines to extend from the sources of the Tiber to Reggio Pass, bounded on the east by the border between Umbria and Marches, which runs along the divide. Similarly, the Alto Tavia begins near the border between Tuscany and Emilia-Romagna. The pass is the point where the Roman Via Flaminia crosses the divide at 575 meters. Starting from Rimini on the Adriatic coast, the old road follows the coast south to Fano, then turns inland and goes up the Fiume Metro to Ponte di Traiano, then up the Fiume Candigliano to Aqualagna, and by the Fiume Barano to Cali. Here the Via Flaminia turns south, approximated today by Highway SP3, which climbing the flanks of Monte Fiume arrives at last at the pass. This is the southernmost limit of the Umbrian Apennines, according to the dictionary. The pass goes down to Gualdo Tadino. Gubbio is east of the Valdivia. The region specified by the dictionary includes Monte Nerone, 1,526 meters, which is actually in Marches. South of the pass, the same chain is in Umbria and includes a number of parklands considered by the Italians to be in the northern Apennines. The Loto project, a recent pilot study for regional landscape planning undertaken by the European Institute of Cultural Roots, an agency Agency of the European Union simply calls it the Apennine Ridge of the Umbria region, which it locates in the central and northern mountains of the Apennines. The western part of this range is considered by some to be the Umbrian Apennines. It includes Parco del Monte Cucco, 1,566 meters, which includes the pass, the road and the Umbrian side of the ridge south to Fossato di Vico. Further south are Parco del Monte Subisio around Assisi and Parco di Colfiorito on the border with Marches. Central Apennines. The Apennine system forms an irregular arc with centers of curvature located in the Tyrrhenian Sea. The northern and southern segments comprise parallel chains that can be viewed as single overall mountain ridges, such as the Ligurian Mountains. The center, being thicker and more complex, is geologically divided into an inner and an outer arc with regard to the centers of curvature. The geologic definition, however, is not the same as the geographic, based on rock type and orogenic incidence. The northern segment of the arc is divided into the outer northern Apennines and the inner northern Apennines. The inner are located in Tuscany and Umbria and correspond well with the geography, comprising the Apuan Alps and Umbrian Apennines. The outer comprise the outer Ligurian, Tuscan Emilian and half the central Apennines, which are the eastern half of the divide marked by the Umbria-Marches border. The central Apennines, also called the High Apennines, are therefore divided into the Umbrian-Marchean Apennines in the north and the Abruzzi Apennines in the south. Umbrian-Marchean Apennines. A natural border exists between the northern Apennines and the central Apennines. A clip-and zone, or band of isolated liguride rocks, follows the Val Marecchia to the Marches Tuscany border and passes through the Monte Rognosi and Arezzo in Tuscany. If extended, the line would touch the northern tip of Corsica, but it is only relevant on the east slopes of the Apennines, where it is located just south of the border between Marches and Emilia-Romagna. The west border of the Umbrian-Marchean Apennines runs through Cali. They extend south to the Tronto River, the south border of the Honor. In the northeast of the range, the Republic of San Marino is located on the slopes of Monte Titano. The highest peak, Monte Vettere, at 2,478 meters, is part of the Monte Sibillini, incorporated into Parco Nazionale dei Monti Sibillini. Further inland is Parco Sasso Simone e Simoncello, and further south Parco Naturale Regionale Gola della Rossa di Frasassi, in which are the Gola della Rossa and Frasassi caves. The Italian Park Service calls it the Green Heart of Italy. The region is heavily forested, such as the Riserva Naturale Statale Gola del Furlo, where Furlo Pass on the Via Flaminia is located. Both the Etruscans and the Romans constructed tunnels here. Abruzzian Apennines. The Abruzzi Apennines, located in Abruzzo, Molise and southeastern Lazio, contain the highest peaks and most rugged terrain of the Apennines. They are known in history as the territory of the Italic peoples first defeated by the city of Rome. Coincidentally, they exist in three parallel folds or chains surviving from the orogeny. These extend in a northwest-southeast direction from the river Tronto to the river Sangro, which drain into the Adriatic. The coastal hills of the east extend between San Benedetto del Tronto in the north and Torino di Sangro in the south. The eastern chain consists mainly of the southern part of the Monte Sibillini, the Monte della Laga, the Gran Sasso d'Italia Massif and the Magella Massif. Among them are two national parks, Gran Sasso e Monte della Laga National Park and Magella National Park, and the regional park of the Monte Cimbrini. Gran Sasso contains Corno Grande, the highest peak of the Apennines. Other features between the western and central ranges of the plain of Rieti, the valley of the Salto, and the Lago Fucino, while between the central and eastern ranges of the valleys of Aquila and Sulmona. The chief rivers on the west are the Nera, with its tributaries the Velino and Salto, and the Anine, both of which fall into the Tiber. On the east there is at first a succession of small rivers which flow into the Adriatic, from which the highest points of the chain are some 20 kilometers distant, such as the Potenza, Chianti, Tana, Tronto, Tordino, Vomano and others. The Pescara, which receives the Aterno from the northwest and the Gizio from the southeast, is more important, and so is the Sangro. The central Apennines are crossed by the railway from Rome to Pescara via Avezzano and Sulmona. The railway from Orte to Terni follows the Nera Valley, while from Terni a line ascends to the plain of Rieti, and thence crosses the central chain to Aquila, whence it follows the valley of the Aterno to Sulmona. In ancient times the Via Salaria, Via Arcelia and Via Valeria Claudia all ran from Rome to the Adriatic coast. The volcanic mountains of the province of Rome are separated from the Apennines by the Tiber Valley, and the Monte Lepini, part of the Volscian chain, by the valleys of the Sacco and Liri. Southern Apennines. The southern Apennines can be divided into four major regions: Samnite Apennines, Campanian Apennines, Lucan Apennines and Calabrian Apennines, including the Sicilian Apennines. Samnite and Campanian Apennines. In the southern Apennines, to the south of the Sangro Valley, the three parallel chains are broken up into smaller groups. Among them may be named the Mattese, the highest point of which is the Monte Milito 2,050 meters. The chief rivers on the southwest are the Liria Garigliano with its tributary the Sacco, the Volturno, Sabeto, Sarno, on the north the Trinia, Biferno and Fortor. The promontory of Monte Gargano, on the east, is completely isolated, and so are the Campanian volcanic arc near Naples. The district is traversed from northwest to southeast by the railway from Sulmona to Benevento and on to Avellino, and from southwest to northeast by the railways from Cianello via Isernia to Campobasso and Termoli, from Caserta to Benevento and Foggia, and from Nocera Inferior and Avellino to Rocchetta e Sant'Antonio, the junction for Foggia, Spinazzola and Potenza. Roman roads followed the same lines as the railways. The Via Appia ran from Capua to Benevento, whence the older road went to Venosa and Taranto and to Brindisi, while the Via Traiana ran nearly to Foggia and thence to Bari. Lucan Apennines. The valley of the Afanto, which runs into the Adriatic close to Barletta, marks the northern termination of the first range of the Lucanian Apennines, which runs from east to west, while south of the valleys of the Seal and Bicento, which formed the line followed by the railway from Battipaglia via Potenza to Metaponto. The second range begins to run due north and south as far as the plain of Sabari. The highest point is the Monte Pollino 2,233 meters. The chief rivers of the Seal, joined by the Negro and Calari on the west, and Abradano, Bicento, Agri, Cini on the east, which flow into the Gulf of Taranto. To the south of the last named river there are only unimportant streams flowing into the sea east and west, inasmuch as here the width of the peninsula diminishes to some 64 kilometers. Calabrian and Sicilian Apennines. The railway running south from Sicigliano to Lagonegro, ascending the valley of the Negro, is planned to extend to Cosenza, along the line followed by the ancient Via Populia, which beyond Cosenza reached the west coast to Torino and thence followed it to Reggio. The Via Herculia, a branch of the Via Traiana, ran from Equum to Tucum to the ancient Nerulum. At the narrowest point, the plain of Sabari, through which the rivers Cosile and Crati flow to the sea, occurs on the east coast, extending halfway across the peninsula. Here the limestone Apennines proper cease and the granite mountains of Calabria begin. The first group extends as far as the isthmus formed by the gulfs of South Euphemia and Squillace. It is known as the Sila, and the highest point reached is 1,930 meters. The forests which covered it in ancient times supplied the Greeks and Sicilians with timber for shipbuilding. The railway from South Euphemia to Catanzaro and Catanzaro Marina crosses the isthmus, and an ancient road may have run from Squillace to Monteleone. The second group extends to the south end of the Italian peninsula, culminating in the Aspromonte to the east of Reggio di Calabria. In both groups the rivers are quite unimportant. Finally, the Calabrian southern Apennine Mountains extend along the northern coast of Sicily, Pizzo Carbonara being the highest peak. Ecology. Vegetative zones. Ecoregions. North and central Apennine deciduous montane forest. North through south, Italian sclerophyllous and semi-deciduous forests. South Apennine mixed montane forests. The number of vascular plant species in the Apennines has been estimated at 5,599, 728 of which are in the tree-line ecotone. Hemicryptophytes predominate in the entire Apennine chain. Alpine zone. The tree-line ecotone is mainly grasslands of the montane grasslands and shrublands biome, with temperate broadleaf and mixed forests, and Mediterranean forests, woodlands, and scrub below it. The tree line in the Apennines can be found in the range 1,600 meters to 2,000 meters. About 5% of the map area covered by the Apennines is at or above the tree line, or in the tree-line ecotone. The snow line is at about 3,200 meters, leaving the Apennines below it, except for the one remaining glacier. Snow may fall from October to May. Rainfall increases with latitude. The range's climates, depending on elevation and latitude, are the oceanic climate and Mediterranean climate. Transhumance.